The Prohibition exhibit, which is up now, will come down before we build the Bourbon Museum. The KDA is a sponsor of Prohibition, but at the end of 2017, Prohibition is coming down, and we are building.
The way you said that makes it sound horrible. They're a sponsor of Prohibition.
Right.
Always find what you love at Total Wine & More. With so many great bottles to choose from at the lowest price, it's easy to find your favorite Cabernet or a new single-barrel bourbon to try with some help from one of their friendly guides. And with every bottle comes the confidence of knowing you just found something amazing. With the lowest prices for over 30 years, find what you love and love what you find only at Total Wine & More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Spirits not sold in Virginia and North Carolina. Drink responsibly and be 21. Ed Bly and Rising Tide Spirits are back again with a new release of Old Stubborn Bourbon. And this release of Old Stubborn is a premium hand marriage of 10, 11, and 12-year cask strength, barely filtered pot still bourbon. It comes in at a staggering 123.8 proof. And the flavoring grain for this one, which the last one was wheated, but this time it's now rye. Rich, sweet, and bold with a long finish that's sure to be another eye-opener. You can order online at Sealbox or thebourbonconcierge.com, and you can even purchase in person at Revival Vintage Spirits, and even now with very few select stores in Kentucky. You can get it now while you can, but be sure to do it because it's not going to last long. From their bar to yours, Chad and Sarah of the popular YouTube channel It's Bourbon Night bring you their favorite at-home old-fashioned mix with the new Elemental Elixir's Golden Hour Syrup. It's a custom-made syrup with notes of bold black tea, warm spices, and orange zest. All you need is your favorite whiskey and ice. No bitters needed. One bottle makes 16 drinks, so that's only $1 a cocktail before you add your own whiskey. They can also be enjoyed in other cocktails or spirits, mocktails, coffee, tea, and anything you can think of. It's crafted locally in Lexington, Kentucky, and you can get your bottle now at whiskeyambitions.com.
Play Whiskey Wednesday, Round 11, the memory game. Until June 26, each week you can win one of our 12 incredible grand prizes. Select $2 at checkout. And if they match on drawing night, you'll win that bottle. Not a match? No worries. You still score a Weller 12-year. Every $5 ticket gives you 5 chances to win, including 4 weekly bonus prizes. Get your tickets now at give270.org. Charitable Gaming License ORG 0002703.
Do you ever pour yourself a bourbon, swirl it around, and then start struggling to come up with tasting notes? And perhaps you're also looking for a good Father's Day gift idea. Well, you can now solve both with a kit from Knows Your Bourbon. And unlike other nosing kits on the market, Knows Your Bourbon kits feature real ingredients for the most authentic aromas. You can smell real Tahitian vanilla bean instead of some synthetic aroma that's just made from chemicals. So head on over to knowsyourbourbon.com. and enter code BP10 for 10% off your order.
Welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Pursuit Podcast. My name is Kenny, and we've got Ryan here today, and we are on site, and we are actually drinking something today that was sent in by one of our listeners back, I believe it was episode 22, when we were just kind of going back and talking about look in the history of our past episodes, and we threw a little Easter egg in there. Ryan, you want to remind everybody of the kind of Easter egg at the very end of the show we did?
Yeah, so we entice people to go on iTunes and do a review for the podcast, and we would send you a free sample, and the response was overwhelming. We got like 30 5-star reviews. I guess everybody was excited about the lineup we were sending out. But yeah, I think it went well, and I think we're going to do it again, right?
I think we should at some point. I think it's a very good idea.
Yeah, we got some promotional products, some koozie stickers, something we can give our biggest fans.
I think so too. So we're actually sipping on something that Josh Menke sent us back. He was actually so thrilled to be somebody that reviewed. We sent him something, and he just wanted to do us a favor and send something back. And so he sent us back a Stranahans Snowflake Pikes Peak 2014 vintage. And we are here trying it right now, and I think it's different, right? I mean, I think he sent it to us because he knows that we are, Kentucky bred,
bourbon snobs,
very, very big bourbon snobs when it comes to only anything Kentucky. But I'm surprised at how good this is.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, it's we drink bourbon all the time, so it's good to change it up. I was a big fan of the Parker's Malt just because it, you throw it in there and it's different from what you're drinking, and I think this does the same thing for me.
I think it's pretty similar in that almost kind of taste and flavor profile too. It's pretty easy, right?
Yeah,
it doesn't have like a very high rye kind of burn to it or anything like that. But well, cool. So let's go ahead and we will kick off the show. So today on the show, we have Andy Treinen. Andy is the Director of Marketing at the Frazier History Museum. So Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. And if I knew you were going to bring me bourbon, we'd have done this months ago, right? This is great. Thank you.
Do it every week.
It's great to taste a different bourbon. This is the first time I've tasted anything in a long, long time from outside the state of Kentucky. But like you guys, I'm game to try some bourbon.
Absolutely.
Always got to mix it up a little bit. So let's talk about something that we always do with all our guests. So kind of talk about your introduction to bourbon. Where did it start?
Well, I'm born and raised in Cincinnati and worked in television for 25 years before I came here to the Frazier. And when I was in Cincinnati, I started drinking. And I think a lot of people probably are introduced to bourbon through Maker's Mark.
Oh yeah,
it's a wheated bourbon, a little sweeter taste. So I would cap off my long TV days with a Maker's Mark at the end of the day, and then I moved to Kentucky. I moved to Milwaukee and then Kentucky, and now I have 40 different brands. Everybody's craft bourbon. I want to try everything. I want to get my hands on everything. I want to be on the Urban Bourbon Trail as an individual, not a bar, with the 50 different brands. So I like everything now. I like all the different things that people are bringing out. If I drink a Maker's Mark now, it's probably a Maker's 46 because your palate evolves a little bit.
You like the French oak better?
Yeah, I like what the wood does to it.
Nice.
And adding the wood, those staves for the next phase of the 46. I know it took them a long time to get there because they were trying to get the perfect blend, but I think they nailed it.
Awesome. So talk about what is the Frazier History Museum. I know people in Louisville. Well, I hope they know what it is, but for anybody that's outside of Louisville, talk about what the museum is.
Well, this museum's really a new museum. The museum started in 2004. It was founded as an arms museum. Owsley Brown Frazier of Brown-Forman is our original founder. Is the gentleman who gave literally about $300 million to the city of Louisville in one way or another. Frazier Rehab gave money to U of L, gave money to Bellarmine. He had some really cool stuff, and his friends talked him into starting a history museum. Most of those things were arms back in 2004, and we've got Teddy Roosevelt's big stick here at the museum. So he basically was talked into opening a museum here on Main Street. And what we like to do is we like to tell stories like you guys. We like to tell stories that matter to our visitors, that matter to Louisville, that matter to Kentucky, and that matter to the world. So that's what we do. We are a collection of we have a world-class collection of permanent exhibits. We build exhibits that are up for a couple of years. We have occasional traveling exhibits. And I know we'll get more into this, and it's part of the reason we're talking. We're also building a bourbon museum.
Well, let's go ahead and let's kind of talk about the exhibit that's here right now.
Okay. Spirits of the Bluegrass, Prohibition, and Kentucky is awesome, and we've gotten great response to it. We opened it at the end of October. And, you talk about the Prohibition story. It's amazing that this happened in the last 100 years. People in this country chose to go dry,
It's insane to me.
Yeah, I mean, so you get into the question of how something like that happened, and we don't make any value judgments on anything. We tell stories. Let it be as it is. And how that happened, we've got a lot of text panels, a lot of information up about how it happened. The temperance movement was a very strong lobby. And let's be clear, what would you think that we consume more now than we ever have in this country?
It's a good question.
I would think so, but I guess you're going to say no.
I'm going to say you're very savvy. 1830, Americans were consuming 3 times what they are right now. Keep in mind, the booze was safer than the water at the time.
Right.
But it was largely men and teenage boys that were consuming. So there was a lot of consumption. It was happening all day, every day. And that kind of led to the temperance movement, led by Carrie Nation, who's featured here. Carrie Nation's father and first husband were terrible alcoholics, and she would go into a saloon with a hatchet and say, "Good morning, sir, destroyers of men's souls," and she would bash the place and busted up. She was arrested like 40 different times. She's from Kentucky, did most of her damage in Kansas. And there was all kinds of propaganda about it. And at the time, it was after World War I, and the German sentiment, there wasn't a lot of people supporting the Germans, and the Germans, they made beer, right? So there wasn't a real strong lobby at the time in support of the distillers and the folks who were making the product. The temperance movement had a very strong lobby, and that's part of how this happened and how America voted for Prohibition, which, as we know, was a very failed experiment and had a lot of unintended consequences.
So let's talk some more about things that are actually in the exhibit, right?
Okay.
So we talked about that. We walked a little bit through. We saw Miss Bingham, some of her things.
Henrietta Bingham, yeah.
And there's some things about new history about what's happening in Kentucky for whether counties are wet or they're dry or they're moist or whatever you want to call it nowadays, right?
Right, absolutely. Henrietta Bingham's who you were referring to there, of the Bingham family. It owned the Courier-Journal. They owned WHS, and she was like a character out of an F. Scott Fitzgerald novel. And she spent a lot of time in Kentucky, obviously born here, and she spent time in New York and spent time in Europe. And she was a wild child. We've got some of her artifacts, some of her things. Her niece found this stuff and was interested in her Aunt Henrietta and wanted to find out why nobody talked about Aunt Henrietta. So we have her traveling chest that she would go overseas with, and she pulled things out of there. And there's like a flask. It's a double barrel flask. It looks like
it's bigger than my head.
Yeah, I mean, it is a monster flask, and it tells the story. And there are stories of her multiple lovers, both male and female. It's fascinating. We do get into the contemporary question about, we still have more counties in Kentucky that are dry or moist than are actually wet. Christian County, by the way, is wet, and Bourbon County's dry, which is interesting.
Little fact tidbit for anybody that is going to be
and we get into the contemporary question like that. Does the government have a role in these kind of things? Should the government be telling people in New York City they can't have a big soda? Limiting the amount of soda that you can drink. This is kind of what happened with Prohibition, and we allow people to vote on that at the end of the exhibit. Contemporary question. I guess you could make parallels to organized crime, which started during Prohibition. Make no mistake, organized crime started during Prohibition. Al Capone, George Remus, all those people, and marijuana, and what's happening today in Colorado, and the amount of tax dollars that's available to the government when you get into that business, and how much is lost if you don't. Yeah,
talk a little bit about, you already said a little bit, Al Capone and George Remus. Kind of what roles did they play during Prohibition? Well, it's fascinating because somebody benefits during Prohibition. Somebody's going to fill that void, and George Remus was one of the men who did that. He's from Cincinnati, and he was one of the real premier bootleggers, and it's kind of how we ended up. Bourbon was still produced for medicinal purposes. There were 6 distillers here in Kentucky that kept their license for medicinal purposes. And he would buy and bootleg and produce, but he also owned pharmacies. So that was one of the distribution channels. And George Remus is the motivation for The Great Gatsby. Because F. Scott Fitzgerald spent time in the military. He was in Louisville, and they met in the Rathskeller at the Seelbach Hotel. Capone met, and F. Scott Fitzgerald became fascinated with this man, and the story is that he was motivated by that and got information from, and that's what he based The Great Gatsby on. Well, that's impressive. I thought The Great Gatsby was named after me, but maybe
yeah. Keep dreaming.
Yeah, I know. I guess
keep drinking bourbon. It will be by then.
Drinking. Yeah. So I guess why did they decide to do a Prohibition here at the museum? I know with shows like Boardwalk Empire, it's kind of brought the Prohibition to light, and a lot of people are interested now in it.
Yeah, there's no question. And part of the reason we decided to do it is, who can tell the story better?
Right.
Who's more affected by it than the state of Kentucky? You could argue that the wine industry in California and the beer makers up to the Northeast, but we are one of the home bases for that story. We've got all these real artifacts from the time, from the raids and the guns that were used during the raids to the stills that were bashed up still with their marks in them. All of those things can be found. All the distillers and the medicinal bottles and some of the original prescriptions are in there. We've got, I guess doctors made $40 million writing prescriptions for bourbon during Prohibition. And it wasn't just take 2 tablespoons of bourbon. It was take 2 tablespoons of Old Forester bourbon. It was specific to the brand. So we thought we could tell the story really well, and our curatorial staff has done an amazing job. They have told the story very well, and we're getting great response to the exhibit.
So what do you think are some of those most prized possessions that you have at the current exhibit right now?
It varies from we've got a number of cars that were used during Prohibition, and they were purported to be delivering milk and poultry and bread, but they were actually bootlegging trucks that ran through the hills of Kentucky. Those are really cool. We have a Tommy gun, which is neat, and in the first bar, the first saloon area that you walk into, everything in there is authentic from pre-20s Prohibition and from saloon in that time. The difference would have been we've got a mixed bag, Fair's beer and Old Forester and all these different signs. The difference before Prohibition, they would have never been on the same wall in the same bar, because at that time, one company, so Budweiser, would have owned the bar. They didn't own the bar, but they were the provider for the bar. So all the glassware, all the product, all the signage would have been Budweiser at the time. And we've got this exhibit team here that built the front of the bar to match the back of the bar, which was a Prohibition-era bar during the Speakeasy.
So talk about the future of what this exhibit is going to mean in the future of quote unquote your relationship with the KDA, or the Kentucky Distillers Association.
Yeah, that's crucial, and they are partners in this Prohibition exhibit, the Kentucky Distillers Association, and they are integral partners and so important to this future bourbon museum. And we have to have them because they bring in all the big distillers. Everybody's building their own thing, right?
Right.
Evan Williams is right across the street. Peerless is down there. Old Forester's building. Angel's Envy. Everybody's got their own thing. So we have to be in partnership, and we got to be very clever about how we do it, and we have to incentivize this experience to all of them because we need them. So what we are going to be is the initial stage, the launching pad for the Bourbon Trail out into the county for all those bourbon tours. So how do we do that? We come up with partnerships, and these are examples. None of these are vetted out, but say we create a decanter that's only available for purchase here, the only place you can get it. And then if you want to do something really cool for another X amount of dollars, if you care to, you can take it out to pick one, take it out to Maker's Mark, and you can get it filled directly out of a barrel there. So it's one of those bourbon experiences that you guys know bourbon enthusiasts love. They want to get something, that nobody else can get their hands on. So we've got to be real clever with creating all those partnerships with all the distillers and convincing them of how there's value in that for them, and they all have to be different.
I think it makes sense that it's the starting point, because when you go to each distillery, you learn each individual's story, but you can come here and kind of learn the whole gamut of stories and everything tied together before you kind of go seek out which ones you want to.
Yeah, and this place is going to look very different. Make no mistake. It's not going to feel like a museum. It's going to feel more like a hub.
Yeah, you got a bar in there too.
Yeah, there's going to be activity here. There's going to be the tours that are going to be starting here and ending here. It's going to be a very different experience with a lot more foot traffic, and we have all kinds of ways that we're going to make that happen. And you're right. All of the distillers tell their own story, and they're all true, but they're all told through the lens of the distillers, right? They're all told through the lens of their historical perspective. And we're going to get into, why Kentucky, why, the limestone, the water, the shipping, the river, how all those things, and everybody's telling the story of the Bourbon Barons, and we all know who they are. And it's still remarkable to me that the men who started this all lived within X amount of miles, and now we're responsible, through all these years, 95% of the bourbon production in the world. But what about, people who've worked, out at one of these distilleries in their third generation working out there, and There are so many great stories that we've determined can't be told anywhere else in the world other than right here. And how many things in Louisville, Kentucky can have that how many things can this city have that kind of a hold on, and this state have that kind of a hold on? I mean, we love our bourbon, we love our basketball, we love our horse racing,
For sure.
So this puts us in that game, right?
Absolutely.
Because when convention business comes to town from Colorado or San Diego, Kentucky Derby is a pretty good brand. The Kentucky Derby Museum is a great place to be, and Slugger Museum, they've got a great brand, and you can't even get into a Louisville, Kentucky basketball game, so they don't play that game. So they now know, the world knows us as this bourbon producer, and this will be the place that they can come to learn about that story and why we are and how we roll.
Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point of sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. Shopify's point of sale is your command center for your retail store. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. And with Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers in line and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns, from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. And get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone. Transform your tablet into a point-of-sale system, or use Shopify's point-of-sale Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Do retail right with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/bourbon, all lowercase, and go to shopify.com/bourbon to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/bourbon. If you're anything like me, then you can't get enough about bourbon. And that's why I'm a subscriber to Bourbon Plus magazine. Bourbon Plus is a quarterly publication that tells the stories from the heart of bourbon, the farmers who grow the grain, the distillers who labor over the process, and the people like you and me who raise their glasses to celebrate it all. Subscribe to Bourbon Plus magazine today at bourbonplus.com, that's PLUS.com, and use code PURSUIT at checkout for $5 off your subscription.
Talk about the expansion and some of the things that you'll be able to see in this, I don't know, you call it exhibit? Like, what are you going to call it?
It's a great question because I struggle. It's bigger and better than an exhibit or an exhibition, but it is not going to define the Frazier because we will still have all these world-class artifacts, and we will still be a history museum. But this will be a magnet destination for bourbon tourism, and I've got my work cut out to me to figure out what to call it. I'm not going to commit to anything right now. We've got some ideas floating around, but we now own some properties to the immediate right of this building, and some of those will be repurposed, and part of the experience will be either made better or lived through some of those buildings.
So we're gonna talk about history. You're probably gonna reuse some things about Al Capone and Remus and some of the newer history. You talked about the limestone and the shipping. Like, are there any other things that we're probably not hitting on? Some of the things that we could talk about.
How great of entrepreneurs these people have been over the years, and the recreation all the way back to Brown Forman being the first company to, hey, let's put it in a bottle. Everybody's going before that time. Everybody would go to the pub or they'd go to a barrel and they'd get a direct pour, and you didn't know exactly what you were getting in there. And Brown Forman said, let's put it in a bottle so people can see that it's pure, that it's clean, and then they can sell in mass levels, to recreating themselves after the downturn in the 80s. And bourbon had to absolutely recreate itself. Bourbon had to recreate itself after Prohibition. How creative were entrepreneurs in that time? Some of them shipping tens of thousands of barrels overseas because they had it produced. Some of them finding a way to continue to produce for medicinal purposes, all the way up to today's craft bourbon industry, or, the Samuels family going with the wax dip. I mean, all those things, these are not, people who are just hanging out, working in just bourbon production and just blue collar jobs. These are brilliant people who are finding a way to recreate their product. So that's one of it. Enchanted will be about the land, about Kentucky. The Enchanted aspect will be about the land of it. It's a refined product, although we are sitting here in my office on a Tuesday afternoon at 3 o'clock drinking bourbon. It is a refined product. It's not something
That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that you enjoy by guzzling and consuming large quantities of.
Or maybe you do.
I mean,
There's no problem with
whatever
that.
the quantity is. But there is a culture to it that it's generally a refined product, and the KDA and the Frazier and all. Every single distiller out there wants their product consumed, but they also want it consumed responsibly.
Right.
For
So
sure.
there's another thing that you kind of mentioned is that you're planning this expansion. You own some buildings. I think that I read were donated by the daughters of Mr. Frazier. And we didn't really talk about the location. To talk about the location of where the Frazier is and how the build out and how that's really going to be affecting, really the tourism of what's going to be happening in Louisville.
Yeah, it's crucial. We're on Main Street. 829 West Main Street, right here on Main Street. We're right across the street from the Slugger Museum, for those who are familiar with the Big Bat. This was Whiskey Row, and many of our partners are recreating themselves. Old Forester's recreating themselves with the distillery right down the street. And bourbon tourism is a thing, right? So much of a thing.
Yeah, I think we had 700,000 visitors last year, an all-time high.
Yeah, 750,000 visits to distilleries. Now, some of them visited more than one, probably.
Right.
Yeah, generally. So I don't know if it's 750,000 people, but it's a big number. Make no mistake, and that doesn't even touch on what's happening on Main Street. So we think there are two different markets. There are the people who that's an investment in your time, your energy, and your money to go out to the distilleries, and we are going to make that experience 100% a possibility for everybody. But there's also this urban bourbon experience, which the distillers are all. Jim Beam's got a place at 4th Street Live now. They're all building right here. So that might be a different audience. Now, for guys like you two and me, we're both.
Right.
We'll take in both of those experiences. But some people come to town and they're here for convention. They don't have time to go invest an entire day or 2 days.
Yeah,
out
because
in
it's
bourbon
100
country.
miles, 100 plus miles you're doing to see everything.
So they'll have that experience right here on Main Street. And the city is very invested in it. The KDA is very invested in it. The CVB is very invested in it. In fact, the city just trademarked the term bourbonism for the first time. So bourbon tourism, bourbonism is a trademarked phrase by the city. So yeah, we think we're in the perfect location and for both the urban bourbon experience and for the bourbon experience out into the Kentucky counties.
Oh, that's awesome. So let's talk more about the museum and some of the things that the events that you guys have been holding. Right, we heard. At least I read about the Old Forester Speakeasy series.
Yeah.
Kind of talk about that and what are the next ones and kind of the amount of people that are showing up to these things.
Yeah, it's been great. And this is audience development because I'm not going to lie to any of your listeners. We are a history museum, and for some people, there's not an interest in just if you put history. It doesn't matter if it's the Frazier History Museum or any other history museum. You put the history museum at the end of it, and they're not interested. Well, we're going to make people interested because we're going to get people in here through these audience development programs, and they're going to realize what a cool place it is and what kind of cool experiences that they can have here. So that was the concept behind the Old Forester Speakeasy series. We went to Old Forester. They're on board. They want to get young. They want to get hip. They want young people drinking their product. So we launched this 4-part series. We did the first one February 18th and didn't know exactly what kind of response we'd get, but young people know what a speakeasy is, and they know the flapper era. They know, and they came in droves. I was hoping for about 200 people. We had 420 people here, most of them 20s and 30s, all dressed up. We had Jay Michaels in here. They were doing hairstyles at no cost to anybody. We had a guy in here giving dance lessons for people, jazz dance lessons. We had Carly Johnson playing on the stage in the Speakeasy. Marketplace Restaurant at Theater Square provided the food. Art Eatables was here, and people had a blast. We did a Survey Monkey afterwards. Everybody had a good time. So we've got 3 more of those coming up this year, and we just think they're going to get bigger and better. We've got to be creative about programming them different kind of bands. Cirque Louis is going to be here next time. We're going to have women hanging down from the silks, a la Pink from the Grammys. They're going to be around. Billy Goat Strut Review is going to be the band for that next one. So we're excited about what that holds. We've got somebody down there doing card tricks. So the next one is June 17th. It's Friday. It's the only in the series it's a Friday. The other ones are all Thursday nights. And that's a Friday because it's part of the Bourbon Affair, the KDA Bourbon Affair. And so they have some play in it, and the day worked better for the Bourbon Affair, and just made a deal with Swig yesterday. It's going to be a Swig event. So that's exciting. And then we've got one on a Thursday night in August and a Thursday night in October. So we encourage anybody that wants to come check out the Frazier, get dressed up, come on down, drink some bourbon. There's a signature cocktail. Old Forester, Jackie Zycan, their master bourbon specialist, is making.
She's a guest on the show.
Yeah, she's making. Yeah, I saw that when I was doing some research. She's making a signature cocktail for all of the 4 events, and you can come. In the last one, we allowed people to make their own. They got to squeeze their own grapefruit and mix their own cocktail. I think there are 2 signature cocktails for the next one. So, that's another one of the things that people get to experience. So we're excited about it.
So is it just a big party? People can just come and they just dress up and kind of just mingle? Is that the whole premise of it?
Right on. Yeah, there's music. There's good music, good food, and good bourbon. And what else makes a good party? And we program all the other stuff around it. And we had a contest to see who was the best dressed for the last one. I honestly, guys, I was expecting, 20 people, maybe 10 different couples. There were like 130 people that lined up when we called for the contest, and I was like, oh, shoot. How am I going to judge this thing? Yeah. So then I convened a group of people, and we found a system quickly to go through and let the crowd be a part of phasing people out. It was just fun. It was fun.
Do you have to have a ticket, or how do you have to get in?
Yeah, it's a ticketed event.
Okay, cool.
And we will their tickets will be on sale for this next one starting the end of this week. So through most of the end of April, May, and June, you can buy a ticket to the next Speakeasy.
Nice. And it looks like price is $35. So
$35 for the next one. Now, and I'll be completely honest with you, the last one was a $15 affair. This is part of the KDA, part of the Bourbon Affair, and that's why it's a slightly higher ticket. So we're just going to provide more value for that ticket. And then we don't know what the ticket, we'll probably fall somewhere between for the last two, $20-25 for the August and the October event. But this next one, pressure's on us. We got to blow it out and make people have a great time. We might do drinks on the roof. I don't know if you've seen our roof. It's one of the best. It's one of the best views in the city. So we might provide a cocktail hour on the roof. We got
to set the bar higher and higher.
Amen.
Kenny, tell Lauren clear her calendar. We'll go down.
Yeah, we got to have you guys come down for it. We'd love to have you.
We can make that happen. So for anybody else that's listening, so you got Friday, June 17th is the next one during the Bourbon Affair. Then you got Thursday, August 18th, and then Thursday, October 20th. So go ahead and start planning your trips to Louisville now.
Yeah, and like you talked about in the Museum Row and everything, and with Old Forester and Angel's Envy, and Evan Williams is already here, Jim Beam's building. I think Louisville's such a hidden gem, I think, throughout the U.S. I mean, there's tons of great restaurants. The bourbon, I think, is going to draw people here, but it's really, to come to Museum Row, it's going to be a destination, really,
Absolutely. And those folks are all partners, Some would say, oh, isn't Evan Williams, aren't they competition? We go to the same trade shows with them. I've got 3 partnerships with them. They've had parties. They've had several parties in our Speakeasy. They have a Speakeasy. We might be starting a Speakeasy tour. It's the great thing about this bourbon industry that you guys know by now, but like everybody believes that a rising tide lifts all boats, So if you become a fan of bourbon, you're really a fan of bourbon. There are very few people out there who are completely loyal to one brand. So that's the KDA. They understand that. They want people to sample, taste, try, consume bourbon. And then once you do, you'll be interested in more bourbon and more bourbon. So it's the same thing in our partnerships with people here on Main Street. There's a Museum Row on Main partnership with all the museums here on what was, Whiskey Row down the street. And we got partnerships through the KDA, through the Convention and Visitors Bureau. We're just trying to get more people to come down because we know that when they do, they're going to have a great time.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
So we're going to kind of wrap this up a little bit. So a lot of our listeners, they go to the Bourbon Trail and they kind of visit a lot of things that they had never heard about unless it was for our podcast, right? So hopefully we can get some more people to kind of come and check out the Prohibition exhibit while it's still up before we've got, I think I read 2018 is kind of when you're starting to move on to those next steps. So there's plenty of time to go and do it. So anybody that is going to be coming to Louisville to kind of maybe hopefully check out the Frazier Museum, how much are tickets? How much does it cost for them to kind of come in and just be able to check out the exhibit?
General admission is $12. And if you're a savvy tourist, you can probably find our rack cards in any place, any other tourist destination. Or at visitor centers, which would get you a $2 discount on that $12 admission. Just look
Mention
at those.
the name Bourbon Pursuit when you come.
Yeah, you guys do whatever. We'll code it and track these folks. But yeah, there's a little coupon in the back of those. You can get in at a $2 discount, and you also there's a real value in membership here. If you're gonna come to multiple events, you might as well just go ahead and become a member of the Frazier Museum because you're going to get in, you're going to save money. Membership's a value proposition, but then you're going to get messaged about all of our events going on. You're going to get to do those cocktails on the roof type things, those exclusive experiences that members get that the regular visitors might not get.
That's awesome. So if anybody wants to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Well, you can contact me right here at the Frazier History Museum. You can find me at Treinen, Treinen, at fraziermuseum.org. Send me an email. I'd give you my cell phone, but I don't want to go quite there.
That's okay.
I wouldn't either.
He can send you those $2 coupons.
Yeah.
Well, Andy, thank you again for being on the show today. This was fantastic to understand more about it. I had the opportunity to go and actually see the exhibit, I'd say probably a few months ago. And when I was there, I was putting all kinds of pictures on Instagram. So anybody that wants to kind of see some of the things that are at the exhibit, go ahead and check out our Instagram page.
Yeah, it's a really cool exhibit. I remember reading about it a few months ago in the Courier Journal about the partnership with KDA and the Prohibition site. And I just think it totally makes sense. Everything is coming to Main Street. It's happening here. And why not start off, your bourbon destination here at the Frazier Museum and get, the whole picture of how this all came together. So I think it's a really cool event not event, but place to come visit. So
we always talk about when we go and talk to distilleries and you do a tour, it's always like, oh, you hear about everything from the grain to the production of the bourbon, right? But there's this whole other thing that sometimes you might forget about, which is the history of it. Why did it even happen? Why are we even here? Why does everybody search for Prohibition bottles and they actually want to try to drink them, right? Like, what are these? Why do we want to search for those kind of things, right? So I think it's a pretty awesome thing that you guys are doing here.
Well, we appreciate you guys coming in, and anytime you want to come back, you can come on in as my guest. We'd love to have you. Well, yeah, if you're going to bring bourbon, you can come tomorrow. We can do this again, right?
For sure.
Daily show.
Bi-weekly. We don't want to push things.
Right.
Happy hour.
Happy hour with Andy's. All right. Well, thank you so much. If you like what you hear, make sure you subscribe to us on iTunes. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Bourbon Pursuit. You can also like us on Facebook. It's facebook.com/Bourbon Pursuit.
Yeah, and any show suggestions, feedback, we'd love to hear from you guys. And if you want to send us more samples, we'll take those as well.
Definitely do that. This show was a show suggestion. So once again, thank you to everybody that does send in emails to try to get us. We do listen.
And one more thing, guys. Actually, if you would like to send samples, 829 West Main Street, Andy Treinen at the Frazier History Museum. I'll take that too.
Well, that's awesome. So thank you again, Andy, and we will see you all next time.